Hello again, and a dubious welcome to the shadow we've seen over cricket. We've seen Australia playing foul down under in that series with South Africa. We've seen since then the remorse of the former Australian captain, but this incident is certain to cast a long shadow over the game. But it raises also that question: is the International Cricket Council also guilty of foul play here?
The visuals that shocked the cricketing world. Australian cricketer Bancroft caught on camera using a yellow object to tamper the ball during the test match against South Africa. Bancroft first rubs the cricket ball with his palm and then rubs it onto his pant. It all seems normal until he can be seen slipping something into his pocket afterwards. When he realizes that the cameras had caught him in the act, he quickly stuffs the tape down his pants. Slow-mo version of the video shows Bancroft transferring the small piece of yellow tape into his pants. When confronted by the umpires, Bancroft shows them a black cloth instead. The visuals then went viral on social media, and analysts questioned Bancroft's actions. In a press conference after the match, Bancroft owned up to tampering the ball.
Yeah, on myself, I saw an opportunity to potentially use some tape, get some granules from the rough patches on the wicket, and try to I guess change the ball condition.
Obviously today was a big mistake on my behalf and on the leadership group's behalf as well. But I take responsibility as the captain. I need to take control of the ship, but this is certainly something I'm not proud of.
Cricket Australia scrambled into damage control mode, banning captain and vice-captain for a year and Bancroft for 9 months.
This is not in the laws of the game, it is not in the spirit of the game. And again, I am angry and disappointed. It is not a good day for Australian cricket.
With their international careers on hold and IPL hopes dashed to the ground, hopefully these bad boys of international cricket have been taught a lesson they will never forget.
So are we seeing signs of double standards from the ICC here? Let's put that question to Meha, who watches cricket for us. Meha, thanks for joining us. Now, Harbhajan Singh sent out a tweet very soon after saying that for a minor misdemeanor or allegations of a minor misdemeanor, such as appealing excessively as someone complained, Indian players were hauled up very firmly by the ICC, and for a far more serious offence, the ICC has not said or done very much here. The Australian board has been far tougher on its players than the ICC has been. So are we seeing double standards here?
I think ICC goes by the rule book, and that's exactly what they have done. In the rule book, in the ICC's code of conduct, the maximum punishment one can get for tampering with the ball is a test match ban, and that's exactly what has happened here with Steve Smith. It is a level 2 offence, and he's been given a test match ban. He's also been charged 100% of his match fee. In Cameron Bancroft's case, he was given 3 demerit points. It also means that this is his first incident, so he couldn't have been given. It's what you collect over a period of time. So in his case, because it was his first instance, he's got 3 demerit points. I think that's the maximum ICC could have done. Of course, the jury is still out on whether they should have set a precedent, and that's something now ICC is looking to do. In fact, what I'm hearing now is that ICC is going to set up a cricket committee which will look into and review the sanctions imposed on some of these issues, and that's something that they'll want to look at. They'll work around it because of course, ICC has also come under a lot of pressure to come up with a bigger, greater punishment than just one test match ban. But Cricket Australia did, they acted swiftly, and they also made sure that, they gave them a very harsh punishment. Both David Warner and Steve Smith have been banned for a year. Cameron Bancroft has been banned for 9 months from all levels of cricket. So, Cricket Australia made sure that with all the public outrage that one has seen in Australia and around the cricketing world, that, this is not taken lightly, and they made a statement out of it. They made sure that, they take that first step in the direction of trying to regain trust of the public.
After all this, do you think that these two Australian players will ever enjoy a degree of acceptability, let alone support from their fans?
Well, I think time is a big healer. At the moment, it looks so unlikely, but we've seen this in the past with Mohammad Amir. He was banned for 5 years for spot fixing. Of course, that's so much bigger an offense than tampering with the ball, or in this case, bringing disrepute to the game or not playing in the spirit of the game. So in this case, I think it'll take some time, and it'll be a long, hard road ahead for Steve Smith and David Warner and Cameron Bancroft, but it's something that one can expect. And if they go about playing without any concerns, I think it should not be a problem. It will, though, take a lot of time for them to regain that trust, for the public and for cricket fans to feel the same way they did about these players before this whole ball tampering fiasco came out. The other thing is also, one has to understand that these players are worshipped when they're playing well. They are, they're looked upon as idols for youngsters. Fans trust them, they trust everything these players do. So I think in that sense, a lot of cricket fans at the moment are feeling betrayed by what they have seen on the screens, the way that whole, tampering saga unfolded. But I think that with time, and of course, all three of these players have apologized to their fans. Steve Smith cried in his press conference. He was absolutely distraught by what has happened. He was devastated. He said so himself. So I think, these players are already feeling extremely sorry, and they've apologized to the fans. In a matter of time, I think, they will find their way back into international cricket. And we hope they do.
And what are the implications for IPL?
Well, as soon as Cricket Australia came up with this one-year ban for David Warner and Steve Smith, I had a chance to speak to the BCCI officials. I spoke to the acting BCCI secretary, Amitabh Chaudhary, and he made it very clear that NOC or no NOC involved, if Cricket Australia has banned these players for a year, there is no way that they will participate in the IPL. And remember, that is a big blow for the Rajasthan Royals and the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Rajasthan Royals are coming back after 2 years. They were embroiled in a controversy of their own with their owner being involved in betting. And so, they wanted to make a fresh start. Steve Smith was somebody, they knew who would captain the side. They, even during the auction, they made sure that they bought players to make a team around him. So that's a big blow for them. Ajinkya Rahane has replaced him as the captain for Rajasthan Royals. For Sunrisers Hyderabad, again, David Warner has been a very integral part of their team. He captained their team last season, and in fact was, scored extremely well. He had 600 odd runs he had scored in that last season, and they ended up going into the last 4. So, he's been a very important part of that team, but he'll not be, involved in this edition of the IPL. In his place, Kane Williamson now has been named as the captain of Sunrisers Hyderabad. So, yeah, IPL and IPL's governing council has made it very clear that any player that does not play within the spirit of the game are not welcomed here. And, that seems to have happened with David Warner and Steve Smith as well.
Thanks, Neha, for all your insight and analysis. The game, of course, goes on, but under this new shadow. From cricket to a more deadly game, the game in Kashmir. Could we be seeing new successes for the Indian government here? And for more on this, let's go across to Srinagar to join our man on the ground, Mufti. Mufti, tell us first, simply, are government forces finding new successes in their battle against terrorists?
Well, if you're talking about the operation against the militants, they've been extremely successful. To give you the statistics, there's some 230 militants who have been killed in last 15 months or so. But in the process, 100 security men, that includes army, the paramilitary as well as police, have also been killed. So clearly, this is a ratio of 1:2.3, 2.5, which again is not heartening for the security forces, given that they have killed militancy and not actually lost its men. If you include the initial days of militancy, clearly these are some of the reverses that security forces are suffering. But that's not the end, and the end of this story, given that more and more youths are joining militancy. In fact, only in last few weeks we have seen at least 10 to 12 boys who are educated, who are extremely young, are barely out of their teens, they've joined militancy. And what is happening on the ground is that the support for militancy remains as it is. Actually, it's extremely intact as of now. In fact, few days back we did see when militants were being taken for burial, there were thousands of people who came out, shouted slogans, waved flags. Now, for the first time, we're also seeing this, that ISIS flags are being raised. The flags of Pakistan also, which are being raised in the funeral processions. And clearly, when you're talking about support to militancy, that's very much there, although security forces are really continuing with Operation All Out. That is really to go hammer and tongs against the militants. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that in terms of support to militancy, well, I'm afraid that that's not waning.
Are security forces following a policy of targeted action against militant suspects rather than firing broadsides against Pakistan?
Well, we have a new Inspector General of Police who replaced Munir Khan, who was kind of an expert for anti-insurgency operations. But the new IG who's come in, Mr. S.P. Pani, has been slightly more detailed about the operations. What he's done is that he has started the night operations. Because why he's done it is perhaps because a lot of collateral damage was happening in the initial last year of the operations, wherein a lot of people would come and collect at the encounter site, and sometimes they would also disrupt the operations by throwing stones. And in the retaliation, we know that security forces also fired. A lot of civilian casualties had actually taken place in last year, especially till November of that year, in which some 20 to 30 civilian got killed and many others wounded. But now of late we've seen that the operations which have started to take place are more based on intelligence, and you have these killings which are now taking place with absolutely no collateral damage now taking place in terms of civilians coming, because when you do those night operations, clearly civilians are not around at that time. One is that, and two is perhaps there is a better grid now in terms of intelligence collecting.
And how do people in the valley appear to be reacting to these encounters with terrorists?
Well, how are people viewing these encounters? I'll say people are indifferent at some time, but mostly they're concerned because these are young boys who are joining militancy, people who are in their teens or mid-20s. These are the kind of crop that militancy really has lured since last 1 or 2 years back. And these are actually people from the families. These are men, youth from families of farmers. If you're talking about the villages, these are also people who are extremely educated. In fact, we have seen over the last few months or so a lot of PhDs, MPhils, people who've got better degrees, they're entering into militancy. In fact, the last time around we did hear that a top Hurriyat leader's son, who was an MBA, has also joined militancy. So clearly these are the local people who are going into the militancy, and it does cause a lot of concern among the families here, and Kashmiris really want to protect their children from going into militancy. However, this is something which they found extremely difficult to really tell their kids that they should not be going into militancy. However, it does happen. A lot of kids are getting swayed into militancy and that kind of is extremely disappointing for the civilian population here.
And what's the position like now on the line of control?
Oh, the LOC and the ceasefire really is in tatters. In fact, the line of control has become line of no control. Every day there are 3 to 4 ceasefire violations which take place. Now we calling them ceasefire violations because we don't have really the communication intact with the other side. So the Pakistanis would like to call it ceasefire violations on part of India. But here, sitting here in the valley, I can tell you that Indian Army always claims that the ceasefire has been breached by Pakistani troopers who have now been pounding not only the Indian soldiers' positions, but also now shells are landing increasingly into civilian areas, and that has really resulted in a lot of casualties among civilians. In fact, a few weeks back we did see a family of 5 died in that shell which landed directly on the roof of the house in Poonch area. Two females of that very family got injured. They had to be taken to the hospital where they've now been treated since last 10 to 12 days. So clearly on the line of control, there's been no let up. If you're talking about the cross-border firing or shelling, that's very much happening. And since January, looking at the stats, we have more than 450 ceasefire violations. Gives you some kind of an idea what the two facing armies are doing on the boundary.
Short break now, and then we have a date with a star. Welcome back, and let's listen in now to a chat with Rani Mukherjee.
In your acting career, what would you say was the biggest Hichki?
I think there was no Hichki from my end, because see, as individuals, I think we are quite comfortable in our own skin. We are quite comfortable being the people who we are, and the kind of person I have been always from childhood. I've been very happy with the way I am. Like I didn't want to change anything of me, and also this industry pushes you to change yourself, either as a person or physically, because there's so many demands that people have, that your voice should be a certain way, you should look a certain way, the color of your skin should be a certain way, because you are the lead star of a film. So there are certain do's and don'ts that come in, at the time that I was debuting. Now things have changed for the better. But during my time, I think my voice was one of the biggest hitchkeys for people, that they thought that probably my voice is not heroine-like, because it's deep and it's husky and whatever those...
Sexy.
Whatever words that come with it.
Back in the college, I was a fan of that. Me too,
आपके लिए तो मैं आज मेरी आवाज जागी जाती है.
No, but have you seen in ads nowadays, it's a very Rani-like voice that they're using everywhere. In all the advertisements.
But at that time they dubbed my voice in Gulam, because collectively Amir and Mukherjee and Vikram thought that my voice is not really heroine-like, and I had a huge, and I was very upset and heartbroken, because for me, I believe that your voice is your soul, that is who you are, that's your inner self, And I was very well explained, and I tell you that I get so much inspiration from Amir also, because he's been like a teacher to me, because I've learned so much from him. And at that time I remember him telling me that, Rani, we always have to do things which are the best for the film. There might be decisions that you might think that are tough decisions that might hurt you, but if it's for the overall good of the film, we have to take that collective decision, and I agree with him today. And he's always been like that. He's always been a team player. And at that point of time, there was a decision taken that my voice was not thin enough, like the way the voices were at that time. And they dubbed my voice.
Papa, please! Aap is tarah baat mat kijiye, wo mera dost hai.
And it so happened that during Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Karan was also making a debut as a director, Karan Johar. And he came up to me one day and he said that, Rani, because I was dubbing the trailer of the film. You know, they had this little trailer where I'm on the swing.
Yeah. So in your white sari.
In the white suit.
So
he came up to me and told me during the dubbing that, Rani, I believe, because Gulam and Kuch Kuch Hota were shot, you know, simultaneously. So he came up to me and said that, Rani, I heard that your voice is dubbed in like Gulam. So I said, yeah, you know, they think that my voice is not. So he said, who dubbed for your first film? I said, I dubbed for my first film, Rajya Ki Aayegi Barat. I dubbed my movie. He says, yeah, but I like your voice. So he said, no. If you've dubbed, and I thought you had a problem with dubbing. I said, no, there's no problem. So he said, then fine, then my movie, it's going to be your voice. You will dub. And I think that changed. Because like Kuch Kuch Hota was such a huge success commercially that because it was my voice in that film, that my voice got accepted, you know, and the audience broke the Hichki that probably people had. And to Amir's credit, I still remember, he watched Kuch Kuch Hota and he called me the next day and he said, babe, I'm so sorry, we made a wrong call. You have a beautiful voice and I think we shouldn't have dubbed your voice. So I think these are the things that have happened in my life, in my career. A lot of people thought I was too short. And then I met Kamal Hassan, you know, during like Hey Ram. And I remember, you know, walking with those platform slippers that we actors wear. And he saw my slippers and he looked at me and said, why are you wearing them? I said, because, you know, I look a little tall. He said, no, you need to be tall with your achievements, you know. And your height is what you are, you know, and I love that. The other thing that Kamal Hassan kind of changed for me, because that time there were a lot of these Hindi films that I was doing which required the actress to be with heavily loaded makeup and this. And the first day on the set of Hey Ram when I entered, and he looked at me and he said, go wash your face and come. And I was like, really? But Kamalji, what about the makeup? He said, no, go wash your face and come. And I really thought he was joking. So I thought he's probably just told me to, you know, tone down the makeup and this. And I very like, you know, how those over smart actors are. I go back to my makeup room and I'm like just removing that little thing, and I come back and I say, look, I have, you know, removed my makeup. And he looked at me again, and you know, KV Anand was the DOP. And they looked at me and both of them said, no, you need to wash your face. And I was like, wash my face? He says, yeah, like, you know, when you, when it's pack up and how you remove your makeup.
Like
freshly scrubbed and you, so I'm like, really Kamalji, really? But shooting? He says, yeah, shooting hogi, jao. And I went, I actually washed my face, and then I came back and I remember he said, now you're looking like my Aparna, you know. And he then put the bindi on my forehead. He says, okay, now I want just slight kajal inside your eyes. And I actually shot the film without makeup. And that gave me so much confidence as an actor that I realized that as an actor, you don't need these crutches. You know, you have to be yourself. And for me, my entire journey has been a learning experience from people who have learned from, you know, that you don't need crutches like makeup or height. You just have to do your job as an actor and the audience will see that. That's what happened with me, I guess.
So true, Rani. As somebody who's watched all your films almost, I can attest to that. And that's a very candid anecdote that you shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
कुछ बातें सुन के अभी भी कुछ होता है. Well, that's it for now from us here on the Shades of India. Have a great week ahead with us on News 18.